And to just kind of give you a reason why you should innovate or why companies should think about innovating, there's been countless studies that have been done. I think the latest one I saw was a study that was published by MIT, and they kind of looked at companies where innovation is a core value or part of their mission or purpose versus companies that don't have that. And what they've found is that companies that really have an innovation culture, companies that have a mission or a purpose of innovation, or it's one of their core values, those companies are much more likely to have extreme profit growth versus the companies that don't are more likely to have zero or negative profit growth, meaning a loss.
Making sense of specialized engineering knowledge is not easy. A majority of the technical know-how is actually learned informally on the job and by doing. If you're fortunate enough, you've had an incredible mentor who's shown you the tricks of the trade. If not, don't worry about it, because this podcast will serve as your own personal tribe of mentors. In each episode, we will extract tribal knowledge from top engineering and manufacturing leaders to help you on your journey. There's really no way of knowing what information you're going to need around the next corner of your career. So let grinding gears be your guide. Hey everybody, Bassanio Peters here, who's your host of the Grinding Gears podcast, and I'm the founder of Assist to Develop. Great to have you back with us. We took a little bit of a break on the podcast just to focus on a few other critical aspects, but we're also rebranding the podcast where before we were trying to help pass on tribal knowledge that is important to know for up and coming engineers, but now we're trying to get more into conversations that anyone can ascertain some value from. And I'm really excited to have Nick Reed-Smith with us today. Nick is, again, someone who I've connected with on LinkedIn, and we had a conversation that really resonated and really stuck with me just about his methodology for innovation and process improvement. So I wanted to have Nick on the podcast to share a little bit of background and experience. But Nick, first, introduce yourself and tell everybody why they should even listen to you in the first place, because I think your background is pretty solid, and give our audience kind of flavor for that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bassanio. I'm really excited to be here. So as you mentioned, my name is Nick Reed-Smith. That might be a little bit pretentious, but I do that because there's about 2 million other Nick Smiths in the United States. So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, it's Nick Reed-Smith, and I'll be the one that comes up with a big old smile on my face and a whole bunch of information there about innovation. But to go back to your question about who I am and why people should listen to me, well, I'm an innovation leader. I'm a relationship builder, a problem solver, and a lifelong learner. And in my current role, I'm the innovation process manager at JBM Packaging, which is a small up-and-coming company in Lebanon, Ohio. I've been there about 2 years so far. And in that time, I've been trained in innovation engineering, which is sort of like an agile methodology. It's similar to that, or like lean startup. But innovation engineering was developed by Doug Hall at Eureka Ranch. And he's a world famous inventor and innovator. So that's very valuable training. And then in the 2 years that I've been at JBM, we've just had tremendous success with our innovation process. So in those 2 years, we've really grown, and it's become the biggest growth engine for our company. In the last 2 years, we've brought in almost $2 million in new revenue just from innovation projects, and an extra $1 million in profit. So innovation, solving those challenging problems, you're going to get better margins, stickier clients, and it's just going to be much better than your core business with your, slimmer margins.
Right. And that's interesting because I was actually reading this book, and it talks about 3 different kind of innovation, not necessarily methods, but more just processes and models for innovation. So there's your sustaining innovation, right? And that's like, simple examples to think of the Toyota Camry. It's not going to be a huge engine for growth like you guys have had. It's targeted at the consumption economy. Then there's efficiency innovation. And it's really, how can you do more with fewer resources? Basically, how can you squeeze as much as possible from existing and newly acquired resources? And it sounds like what you guys are doing is market creating innovation. You're creating new markets that serve people who basically either the products didn't exist or existing products just weren't affordable or accessible for various different reasons. So that to me is exciting to see that you guys are taking on that challenge, because I think a lot of times people are focused on efficiency innovation and sustaining innovation, because market creating innovation, quite frankly, is difficult. But one thing I like to do is just ask you kind of a random question, but what's the most interesting thing about your past?
Well, that's a great question. I've had a pretty varied past. One thing I like to tell people is, right out of high school, I took a sort of non-traditional path. I did well in high school and everything, but when all my friends went off to join college, I was looking at the situation. I was like, man, these guys are taking out loads of student, loans and just loading up on debt. And I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was sort of sick of, you know, authority figures and everything. But I decided that instead of joining college, hey, guess what? I grew up here in Virginia, and I'm going to join the Navy to get out of Virginia. So, of course, they sent me to Norfolk, and that worked out perfectly. And then I ended up joining the submarine force as a nuclear machinist's mate on the USS Montpelier. And, for about a year, they had me sleeping on a torpedo. I don't know a whole lot of other people other than other sailors who slept on a torpedo for a year, but that's what they do. They don't have enough beds for you on a submarine. So, you sleep on a mattress, which is ratchet strapped to a torpedo for a year. And then when you make it to the big leagues, you get to do what's called hot racking, which is sharing your bed with two other guys. And it depends on what shift you're working. Someone else is sleeping in your bed.
I think that sheds light definitely on some of the things you guys go through. And again, appreciate your service. But one thing I wanted to just kind of bring up is, our vision here. Well, first, let me go back. I think something that's very important to understand is that everybody has a different path. Right. And to me, this is important. And in a previous conversation with the author of The Making of an Expert Engineer, he talks about how initially when he got started, he was creating sheep shearing robot, right? Like that was his engineering path. And it took him on this learning experience with all the different interesting jobs that he did as an engineer, which helped him to come up with the idea to write a book. So again, everyone's path is different and everyone's journey is different. And I think it's important to go on your own path to find that place of understanding so you can really figure out what it is that I want to do. And I think that's an important thing that you did. Me personally, I went to college on a basketball scholarship. I came home from college, had no clue what I wanted to do, got into home loans right around the time the economy was set to crash. I saw, kind of the writing on the wall, and my now wife, which was just my girlfriend at the time, was like, hey, there's this company that sells what's called, I don't know, CAD and PLM software. They're in the engineering industry. You should, they're in the same building as us. You should potentially try an interview. And I interviewed and fell into this industry basically, and I haven't left. Like I fell in love with the process and creating products and, coming from a background of business, business development. And that's what I went to school to study, right? Is business, and then played basketball. But coming home, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. But again, I fell in this industry, fell in love with the process because I had no experience. I just not even played dumb, just asked a ton of questions and learned more about how to take a product from concept to doorstep, which then led me to launch, the startup that we're running now, Assist to Develop. So I think that's awesome part of the experience that you went through. And one thing that kind of segues to is, our vision is to democratize innovation, help anyone, anywhere, create anything, right? But to do that, you got to democratize the tools, knowledge, resources, and know-how to create amazing products. And I think that I want to demystify what innovation is right now, because obviously you've gone through Eureka Ranch and you were trained by Doug Hall, right? And I know that's a pretty reputable organization, and you've proven to be successful at JBM Packaging. So, this is an opportunity to democratize the knowledge that you have and share it with our audience. So can you just tell us, like, number one, what does innovation mean to you? And then why should companies seek to innovate beyond just sustaining innovation and efficiency innovation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are great questions. So what is innovation? I think that's really the key there, because you hear that term thrown around all over the place, and innovation means so many different things to so many different people. And for us, we sort of look at innovation and we say, it's all about delivering meaningfully unique solutions to end users, right? So let's break that down a little bit. Meaningfully unique, right? Meaningful means it's something that someone's going to buy. I could have something unique, which is something that no one else can make, but if it's not meaningful to the end user, they're not going to buy it. And then the unique part too is saying, hey, let's make something that's really difficult. It's a challenging problem, and maybe even something we can put some intellectual property around. And if we can do that, then you have a little bit more power in the marketplace to say, hey, look, I'm providing you an awful lot of value here. And so it's all for us, it's all about exchanging value. We want to provide value to our customers, but we also want to get that value in return. So providing meaningfully unique solutions, for us, that's what innovation is all about. And it's great because it's all about basically doing things that are win-win. And to just kind of give you a reason why you should innovate, or why companies should think about innovating, there's been countless studies that have been done. I think the latest one I saw was a study that was published by MIT, and they kind of looked at companies where innovation is a core value or part of their mission or purpose, versus companies that don't have that. And what they've found is that companies that really have an innovation culture, companies that have a mission or a purpose of innovation, or it's one of their core values, those companies are much more likely to have extreme profit growth, versus the companies that don't are more likely to have zero or negative profit growth, meaning a loss. So basically, we look at innovation and we say, hey, if you look at the business cycle here, you can have, every company you start out and it's like, okay, you've got some early adopters, then you kind of become mainstream. But over time, if you're doing well and you're mainstream, competitors are going to see that and say, hey, how can we go out there and imitate what these guys are doing and cut into their margins? And then you start to get on the other end of that curve where it's all about cost cutting, and then eventually you die. There's countless examples of that. Look at companies like, Research in Motion, RIM. They had the BlackBerry, or even Blockbuster. I mean, these huge companies that we all remember from just, not that long ago, but just they had incredible success with innovation, but weren't able to sustain it and weren't able to restart that business cycle. And because of that, no one talks about them anymore. They're out of business. So for us, we think innovation is about restarting that product or that business life cycle. It's all about profit and minimizing loss. And then third, it's about working on fun projects that matter.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. And I think one of the most important things that I've recognized just in my career is following a process, though, right? Because people want to innovate. You hear all the reports of, research and development and innovation being down in the United States, and China's thriving on this. And, we're kind of struggling to really take advantage of the opportunities. But, what I often talk to organizations about is there's a process that you have to follow, right? It's not just let's throw a bunch of ideas together and then honestly it gets political where, someone with seniority, people may all vote on their idea, but their idea might not be the best idea. And, it's a bunch of guys, people think innovation is a bunch of guys in a room sitting there and, just coming up and having that eureka moment instead of what the actual process is. So I'm sure that in your time and developing the processes from JBM and learning what you've learned at Eureka Ranch, probably prescribe to a systematic process. So Can you kind of share that with the community and with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the 30,000 foot level, the innovation process is basically this, right? There's discovery, which is going out there, talking to your customers, even examining the marketplace as a whole and figuring out, what are some problems or some opportunities out there that are really ripe that you think you could provide a solution to. And once you know what those problems are, then you're going to want to go into some ideation, some brainstorming, or, as we call it, defining your innovation concept. Once you have those different innovation concepts or those different ideas, each of those ideas are going to have different obstacles, or we say death threats associated with them. So we'll look at all those different ideas and we'll say, which of these ideas is going to be the most meaningful, the most unique. And then also we want to say, let's list out all the different obstacles to that idea, so we can say, what is the biggest challenge that's going to prevent this idea from coming to fruition? And then we're going to use that to help visualize risk. And then we're going to perform a bunch of experiments, right? So, an easy experiment could even be going out there, writing everything down on paper and presenting it to someone, almost doing like a miniature pitch like you would see on like Shark Tank, and seeing how people are going to react to that. And then, you could have other experiments where you say, hey, I'm going to put a really rapid prototype together and run a test, see if this thing's actually going to work, and then once you go through that iterative process of basically coming up with new ideas, testing them, failing a bunch of times, but learning from your failures, then moving forward, you keep doing that. And then you go out there and you collect some customer feedback, and you keep doing that process, and eventually you're going to reach success. So that's pretty much our process. It's discovery, ideation, obstacles, experimentation, and then customer feedback until you hit project success.
Right. And I think that's spot on. And one of the things that I think I mentioned earlier, but I want to reiterate is, in that process of discovery, how do you prioritize those things that are truly delivering customer value, but also making sure that it's profitable on your end? And I feel like that's something that up and coming engineers that are graduating school just aren't taught, right? They don't know how to create products that have commercial value and don't understand what commercial value is. Just because you think this feature is awesome doesn't mean that the customer is. And you have to have those conversations. You have to constantly iterate. So I think that's a kind of really important point. Now, you guys have this process that you've obviously followed. Do you have any case studies that you could potentially share just to give some real world examples of the success that you've had at JBM?
Well, sure. I think you kind of asked two questions there. So first, I'll kind of go back and talk a little bit more about our discovery process. So just to kind of help people figure out how we prioritize things, because that is a big problem, right? We always have so much work coming in. Now, one of the things we can benefit from, we're an established company, so we've got an established customer base. So we don't necessarily have to go out into the marketplace and say, hey, what do we think the next big thing is going to be? And try and sit there, until the lightning bolt strikes. No, we've actually got customers who are banging down our door saying, hey, you already solved this problem for us. What about this other problem we have? So that already kind of lets you know right there, that's a problem you might want to be looking at, especially if there's other customers. If you have multiple people asking you for it, that might be something you want to look at. But it's all about asking the right questions, right? So asking people, hey, why is this a problem? How long has it been a problem? What is the impact to you of this problem? What's it costing you to have this problem? And what would the value be to you if we were to solve that? And then once you collect all that information, we kind of summarize all that. And we have a spreadsheet that we use to calculate all of our different priorities. And the three things that we're really looking for are, one, what's the value to the customer? So, is this really going to solve their problem? And is this going to be something that they're really going to value? Is it really meaningfully unique? Is this something they're going to want to buy right away? Two, what's the value to the company? Meaning, are we going to get paid for this? Is this something that, a project that is in our wheelhouse that we think, we can deliver on? And then 3, ease of implementation, right? So you don't only want to work on like super easy things to implement, but you have to bake that in as well to say, hey, look, you might come ask me for something that's completely outside my wheelhouse, not even within my strategic vision, and that's going to get a really low score on my ease of implementation. And I might say, well, I've got another project here that's valuable to the customer, really valuable to the company, and it's going to be a little bit easier to implement for us because it's, closer to packaging or other things that we know how to do. And that's a project that I'm going to want to pursue before I pursue that really crazy, out of left field project. So I don't know if that kind of makes sense. And then I forgot the second part of your question already.
Well, it was just, I'm going to go off on a tangent just for a second. The second part of the question was case studies, but we'll get to that after this. I mean, I can tell you that we're going through this right now, right? So we've done the research, the experimentation, and now we're in the process of like, all right, we've identified after having conversations with customers, what are the next best features that we're looking at. And we prioritize based on 3 parameters. 1, customer acquisition, 2, revenue, and then 3, time to market or ease to build. And then we rank each of those at a score of 1 to 3. And we go through each of the projects and say, all right, this particular project is going to really help with customer acquisition. It may not drive a ton of revenue. So for customer acquisition, rank it score 1 to 3. And then also the same thing for revenue and for time to market. And this is how, again, everybody kind of can help to identify what their own process is. But this is what we did for us. We went through the initial stage of coming up with, all right, what are the ideas that are important to us and important to our customers? What are the problems our customers are facing, and how can we proactively solve those problems, get customer feedback? Once you get that feedback, the whole Henry Ford quote, people would want faster horses if you would ask them. So you have to take that into consideration. And that's part of the innovation process, but you can't just throw stuff against the wall and hope that it sticks. So I'm just wanted to share that. I'm going through that exact same thing right now. Now, to the second question, we were talking about, can you share some case studies? Because you have a lot of really good ideas as far as the process that you guys follow. And obviously, you've been successful with the revenue you've been able to ascertain in the couple of years you've been there. So tell us some real world case studies that you've applied this process and this methodology.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our big ones was GSK, or GlaxoSmithKline, big pharma company. We had a situation where we were making envelopes for them, and we were making a bunch of cartons to deliver those for them. But what we found out about it was, hey, they had some inefficiencies in their process, right? So they want to be able to take these envelopes and put them in a machine that would automatically fill them. And there was a lot of different things involved with that. So we got together with the customer. We really, wanted to dive deep into what the problem was and understand how we could overcome that. And we basically redesigned the entire carton to make it such that it would be much easier for them to load these up. And we made it basically, I use the word idiot proof, but there's like a Japanese term for that, poke-yoke or whatever. But we implemented some different things in this package so that they could just load it in their machine, and just saved a ton of time in terms of like their labor hours and everything like that. It just made it a much easier process for them. And then 2, the package that we came up for them too was, it was more cost efficient. It was streamlined. It had less material waste. There was a lot of different things that went into that solution, and it was just a slam dunk. A couple other examples is, our hiring process. So if you look at, and this is a little bit different because it didn't necessarily go through every single phase of our innovation process. But I think what I'm trying to illustrate here is you can take bits and pieces of our innovation process and apply them to different challenges. It doesn't just have to be product development. But we looked at our hiring process and we were like, hey, this is a situation where a lot of manufacturing companies are facing some of the same challenges right now. When you have people who are working on the floor in a factory environment, a lot of people are seeing an aging workforce right now. They're seeing situations where, hey, it's really hard to compete for that skilled labor in the low to medium range pay target. And we realized, just doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results just isn't going to work out. So we said, well, what can we do? What can we change? And one of our thoughts was, well, hey, what if we partnered with some local correctional facilities? And you've got some guys in here, and some gals too, who are in there for really, nonviolent, pretty low level things. And we said, well, what if we partnered with these people? We could figure out, we could put some things in place to where we could screen these people, and we could make sure that everything's going to be a good fit. But it's great. It's sort of a triple win, right? It's a win for us because we now have an established pipeline into our facility, and these people are getting trained actually in the facility while they're doing their time, and then they come out ready to go, ready to hit the ground running. So it's a win for us because we have a new talent pipeline. We have lower turnover and everything. It's a win for them because, they now have a job the second they come out the door. And it's a win for the community too, because if you look at recidivism rates, that's something where it's kind of sad when you look at this country, because there's these people who, a lot of them got into situations that, you can really sympathize with. We had one lady who, basically had surgery, got hooked on some painkillers, and ended up getting in a situation where the law got involved. But you hear her story and you're like, that to me doesn't sound like something that, I feel like that could happen to anybody. So why wouldn't you want to give that person a second chance? And she ended up becoming like our team member of the month. She's just a phenomenal worker. And so that was, another innovative way that we could fix our hiring process. It's just been a huge success. And we call that our Fair Chance program. Some other things we've worked on. I know I'm kind of going on a little bit.
Dude, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have to pause there because that's phenomenal. That really strikes a nerve with me because one of the things that we're trying to do when I say the term democratize innovation is bring minorities into engineering and advanced manufacturing. And it's interesting because my CMO and I talk about when we say minorities, this isn't just people of color. That's a focus for us. As me being a person of color, I want to see more minorities in engineering and manufacturing as well. But minorities can also be, veterans, parts of different communities. It can be just people that haven't had any exposure to this industry. And if you give them the opportunities, again, people that are incarcerated that, maybe aren't there for violent crimes, right? And maybe it's people that want to turn their life around, giving them the opportunity and then developing a process to follow to make sure, hey, here's the things that we're looking for. These are the things that we do. To me, that's of extreme importance. And I just want to commend yourself and then obviously the team at JBM for doing something like that. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but that to me is really what it's all about.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. For us, we look at that, and there's been plenty of challenges with that because I think a lot of people look at that, and certain companies think, well, why would I want to give that person a chance? And really, it's just been a huge success for us. It's been a huge success for our employees. It's been a huge success for the community. And it's something where we look for people when we bring them on, even if they're not of that particular persuasion. We say, if you don't believe in our mission of what we're trying to do here to help people out and provide value, we're not even sure that we want to work with you. We're looking for people who aren't just going to accept what we're doing. We want promoters. So that's just been a huge success. But kind of going back to some of our other innovation things in terms of like product development and stuff, some other things we've done, we've put a couple of patents in place. And then another thing that we started doing too is we'll actually go out and we'll brainstorm with our customers, and we'll say, hey, you can actually kind of generate your own demand here. So if you learn some good facilitation tools, some good brainstorming tools, you can actually get out and say, hey, if you guys are willing to invest a couple of hours here, we'll be more than happy to come out to your facility, learn about some of the problems and opportunities that you guys have. We'll use some brainstorming tools, and we'll just put a bunch of different ideas on a whiteboard here, and we can generate like hundreds of ideas in 2 hours just because of the quality of the tools that we use. And then some of these ideas are going to be things that you guys can implement on your own that we're not even going to be involved in. And you can kind of keep those for free for goodwill. But then the other side of that is some of those ideas are going to be things that you're going to say, hey, this is a great idea. I'm going to need some help implementing this. And we'll partner with you guys. We'll do the development work. And then it might generate a new product for us to sell to you guys. So it's just sort of one of those win-win situations. And that for us is what innovation is all about.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I mean, again, you're creating demand for new projects just by going out and providing value. And I think that's a big thing that, is starting to be talked more about today is like, hey, first and foremost, try and create value, try and provide value versus trying to sell your products or your service to someone else. So Nick, we're running short on time here. So I want to wrap up by just saying thanks again for your time. Greatly appreciate it. Tell us a little bit more about kind of what you have planned in the future and then how people should connect with you if they want to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I'm going through a really exciting time right now. Things at JBM have just been going great, but in addition to that, I've got a little 2-year-old daughter, and we're going through some potty training. So that's definitely in my short-term goals right there. But other than that, on the innovation side, right now I'm also working on a master's in business administration. And through that at Miami University, we just started an innovation and entrepreneurship club, and we're getting some people involved with that and helping people learn this process, learn how to start businesses, learn how to go out there and create value for people while at the same time creating value for themselves. And that's sort of my mission and my goal is just like you guys, I want to go out there, demystify and democratize innovation as well. And, one of my long-term goals is, hey, I want to help other businesses grow and I want to help other people grow. And if you want to get in contact with me and learn some more, best places to reach me, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you go to linkedin.com/in/Nick Reed Smith, you can find me there. And I also have a YouTube channel. Again, you can just kind of find me at Nick Reed Smith. And that's the best way to reach out to me. And I'm happy to help people wherever I can and just happy to connect and network.
Absolutely. Nick, appreciate the time, man. Again, this all started just from a conversation on LinkedIn, and I think you provided a lot of value here and helps us on our mission to democratize innovation, which is awesome that, part of your goal. So what I like to say is onward and upward together. So with that, thanks everybody for joining us. Stay tuned. The frequency of the episodes is really starting to pick up. One of the next episodes coming out is super exciting, just like this one was. So Nick, again, thanks for the time. Best of luck potty training. Mine are 6 and 8 now, so I'm past that stage, and each of them are different. So best of luck on that journey in itself. And until next time, everyone, have a great day, afternoon, whatever the case might be. Cheers.